Okay. All right. A very warm welcome to you all. My name is Bipika Podel, and I serve as the Research Operations Manager at GRIT, Global Research Institute and Training Center. It is based here in Kathmandu, Nepal. My academic background is in urban planning, and my professional journey has led me to focus on research aspects of this sector. It is my honor to moderate today's session as part of the GRIT's webinar 2026. Today's session is titled Understanding the Structure of the Research Paper, IMRaD and Beyond, How Journals Read Your Paper. This is a crucial topic for researchers at all stages because the way a paper is structured often determines whether it is taken seriously by editors, reviewers, and ultimately the scientific community. We will explore not only the IMRaD framework, introduction, methods, results, and discussion, but also how journals triage submissions, what common structural mistakes can lead to desk rejection, and how to distinguish between well-structured and poorly structured papers. Let me begin by introducing our company first. Established in 2023, GRIT is an independent institution dedicated to advancing research, providing specialized training, and publishing high-quality academic journals. Our mission is to foster academic excellence and knowledge dissemination by conducting projects through our in-house collaboration team and in collaboration with universities and research institutions worldwide. We are proud to serve as a hub for inclusive research and global collaboration, bringing together mentors and participants from across disciplines and countries. Today, we have chapters in 55 countries. We have a strong presence in the African region and the South Asian region. We hope to expand our reach and services internationally moving forward. In terms of services, we organize trainings that cover practical research-related skills, such as SPSS, Stata, R, Power BI, and others. Trainings are also provided on writing strong research papers, using AI in research effectively and ethically, and project monitoring and evaluation. We also create spaces through seminars for research paper sharing and dissemination. Where experts can exchange ideas on the particular themes, helping knowledge grow through dialogue. Every month, we also host webinars on research skills, such as the one we are having today, led by our international members so that our community benefits from diverse perspective and global expertise. Next. Beyond training, GRIT offers publication strategy support. We help researchers convert manuscripts into articles and select the right journals and refine their work through editing and proofreading. Finally, GRIT also provides mentorship support. We guide researchers in writing their paper from choosing a topic to structuring their work through to publication. Next. Alongside our training and mentorship programs, GRIT also contributes to academic publishing through 2 journals. The first is Journal of Sustainability and Environmental Management, or JOSEM. This is a quarterly peer-reviewed open access journal. It publishes research papers, reviews, case studies, technical notes, and short communications in the field of environmental science and sustainable practices. The second is the Journal of Multidisciplinary Research Advancements, or JOMRA. This is a semi-annual peer-reviewed open access journal. JOMRA welcomes contributions from a diverse range of disciplines, supporting interdisciplinary dialogue and collaboration that can drive innovation and impact. JOSEM and JOMRA reflect GRIT's commitment to high-quality academic journaling. Behind GRIT's programs and journals is a committed team that makes everything possible. Our Nepal-based team are present here today. This event would not be possible without their collective efforts. Additionally, the international community of our journal board and members of different GRIT chapters across the world are vital to maintaining global dialogue and hosting seminars, conferences, and webinars. It is in that very spirit of global dialogue that we gather here today for this webinar. Today's session builds on GRIT's mission of connecting researchers, sharing knowledge, and strengthening academic practice across borders. To guide us through an important discussion on how journals read your paper, we are privileged to have with us Dr. Kojo Ahiakpa, a distinguished researcher, consultant, and agribusiness advisor. Dr. Ahiakpa holds a PhD in vegetable science from Huazhuang Agricultural University in China and an MPhil in nuclear agriculture from the University of Ghana. He currently serves as team lead and agribusiness advisor at Research Desk Consulting Limited and as senior agribusiness policy and research advisor at the Chamber of Agribusiness, Ghana. Beyond his professional roles, Dr. Ahiakpa is a prolific scholar with dozens of publications in leading journals such as New Phytologist, BMC Plant Biology, The Plant Journal, Food Control, and PLOS ONE. His work spans genetic diversity, crop improvement, food security, climate adaptation, and biotechnology acceptance in Africa. He has also contributed book chapters, policy briefs, and consulting reports, bridging the gap between academic research and practical impact. Importantly, he has mentored early career researchers worldwide, developing content for AuthorAid's global, massively open online courses on research writing and presenting at international conferences. We are truly fortunate to have Dr. Ahiakpa with us today to share his expertise on how journals read and evaluate manuscripts, and how researchers can strengthen their writing to meet international standards. Dr. Ahiakpa, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Bipika, and the great team. Thank you for. Sorry, is my voice audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon from Ghana, in West Africa, and good evening. I know it's evening in Nepal and in Pakistan and the Asian area, China, around these areas to be evening by this time. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So, just like the host has already introduced myself, I wouldn't want to bore you with rehashing of them. So we'll go straight into the section for today. It's going to be quite an interactive session. In as much I will be having a Q&A section, I would like to go through a bit of the PPT we had for this section, and then it can guide our discussion subsequently. In the course of our discussion, should you have any questions, please prompt me. Let's address them before we move on. Others would prefer for you to take down note. Yes, you can also take down note, but most often, taking the down note means that you might end up forgetting most of the things that you like to speak about or you like some clarity on and some explanation about. So you can prompt me and then we take it up from there.
Yeah, you can also
today
send the questions in the chat, and then I will be looking at them, and then I'll ask the questions as well.
Super. Yeah. So we'll be looking at understanding the structure of a research paper, specifically the most popular structure, which we called IMRaD. And then there are other methods and structures beyond the IMRaD. And so you can see the word here, beyond. And then it all leads to how journals read your paper, how journals assess your paper, and give their decision. Either your paper should be submitted for review or your paper should be DEX rejected. And so we'll look at all that in the course of the discussion. This is going to be the discussion, the outline to guide us in this discussion. I call the first one, which is the introductory part, the cracking the code, for you to understand how a paper needs to be structured. And also looking at it from a point of the language of science as a universal structure that cut across the science field. And then we'll specifically take a look at the IMRaD framework and also as a complete package for the publishing process, especially for those of you who are in the sciences like myself. We'll now look at the specific structures, the key component of the structure of this IMRaD structure of a paper. which is the most popularly accepted globally in the scientific world. And then we'll look at the journal perspective. What are some of the things that journals look out for as an editor-in-chief or editorial assistant? What are some of the points they want to look at, they want to see in your paper, in your manuscript submitted before they make the first decision, which is the DEX decision, either to DEX reject it or to recommend it for peer review. And so I would like you to visualize a research paper as an hourglass. You can see here, this is an hourglass I've illustrated here on the slides. So the top part here looks at, maybe can you help me accept those who are joining so that they don't disrupt the flow? So the hourglass here, the first part, which looks at the outmost part here, refers to the introduction. So you see the introduction as a general overview of the topic or the theme your research is about, your study is about. And so here you look at some key features. We'll look at the key component, what goes into the introduction. And then once the introduction comes, you'll be able to tell us what are the specific objectives you intend to achieve, what are the aims you are trying to, what are the gaps you are trying to fill, and why are those gaps necessary, the justification for that. And then you move straight away to the specifics, which to me are some of the most important components of the research paper. You look at the methodology. What are the tools you are going to use? What are the materials you are going to use to experiment with the idea that you have and be able to meet the objectives, generate data to speak to them and see how you are able to resolve that. And so the materials and method, others you call it methodology, others you call it the materials, others you call it the methods. They all falls under this enclaved concave side of the hourglass. And then you see it opening gradually, which comprises of the results section. And so from the results section, you lead up to the discussion. That is from deductive to inductive section of your paper. And then you open it up, you situate it within literature, you compare it, you correlate it, and then you contrast it with other works that have been done in the field. And then you conclude as to what are the implications. What do this finding mean for academia? What do it mean for practitioners like yourself and myself? What does it mean for policymakers? What does it mean for industry in general? And so I will start off by saying that the structure of the research paper is a standard norm in the research field. Whether you are in the sciences, whether you are in the humanities, it is a structure that has been adopted and has been accepted universally and globally. It is a norm. And once it has been accepted as a norm, it means that there are certain specific information that we need for each of these sections. In most fields and in certain journals, these standards are mandatory. In certain journals, they are quite flexible. Most journals these days is quite compulsory. And so you need to be able to be familiar. You have to be familiar with the structure, with the author guidelines. We'll get into that in a bit in the subsequent slides. And so the structure here gives the scope as to how your paper needs to be structured and formatted so that it can meet the requirement. Why is this structure useful to you and I who are researchers, especially early career researchers like you and myself? One, the structure here ensure that there's a standard that help readers to know where to look for which information in your paper or your manuscript. The second, there are several reasons, but these are the three core reasons I'm going to give you. The second reason is that a standard structure makes writing easier. It also enables the authors it guides authors as a guidance. It serves as a guidance for the authors in how they structure their papers. Maybe let me use another word to not to confuse you. To organize your manuscript or your article. How do you organize your work? How do you organize it in such a way that when I pick each of these sections, this is what you are referring to? And the last but not the least is that a standard structure helps to ensure that all the relevant information that needed to be presented or that is required to be reflected in a manuscript or in an article, everything there is present. And so it gives you as a guide, as a filter to know which section to fetch this information, which section to extract this information, and all that in the paper. And so we need that standard structure for a research paper that is published. Now, to further explore this, I also see a standard structure for a research paper as a convention for global communication. Science is a global endeavor, and in the field of science, English language has become the language of science and commerce. And so in this common language, there's a common language for communication in this field. Then what format should that communication take? And so you see the structure as a format, especially in the scientific field. That is a format a scientific paper need to follow so that it can easily be interpreted by somebody in Brazil. Maybe the paper was drafted and published by authors in Japan, for instance. And so it makes easier so that any researcher who is in your field, who is not even in your field but familiar with the topic, will be able to trace what exactly we did, what are the unique and novel findings. And then they can also try to replicate or to build on your work to do deeper dives into the topic. It also mirrors what we call a scientific process, which I know most of us who are science students are aware of. So it kind of exposes us to the question that leads us to arrive at the problem that we want to tackle. You've noted a problem, you have to ask questions. In this age of AI and artificial intelligence and all that, with AI assistant and all that, questioning is a very key skill. And it says rates questioning as one of the key skills that you need to learn how to ask the right questions. If you don't ask the right question, I'm sorry, your AI to give it the wrong responses. And you don't blame the AI, you blame yourself. So how to frame your question to be able to elicit the right responses are parts of the scientific process. And then this leads you to how to be able to arrive at a response will lead you for you to set up a study, which is an investigation. And then that'll lead you to the discovery, which is the findings, which is the results. In the investigation stage, this is where the methodology is very key. What are the tools? What are the materials? What are the resources that you need to set up that experiment to be able to arrive at that discovery that you are looking for or you are anticipating? And then the meaning here leads to results the discussion, the interpretation, the implications of your results. What are the implications of your result? Or what value does it hold for society? What value does it hold for the scientific community and practice industry, for instance? And it's also provide a predictable map if you want to visualize it for busy editors and reviewers. Editors receive thousands of volumes of submissions every month and every week. And so for them to be able to sift through and filter through this and come out with the relevant material that is meet their requirement as a journal, they will have to sift through your work. If your work does not follow a standard structure, they will be ambiguous or they will be arbitrary in terms of their judgment, in terms of their assessment outcomes. You yourself, you even debate them. Sometimes researchers will argue why our paper was rejected, why a reviewer rejected our paper. And so if that structure is not in place, it becomes difficult for you to be able to make editorial judgment more justifiable. Now, like I pointed out, beyond the structure, what I've mentioned, there are other components of a research paper or research articles that you might not necessarily see us making reference to, but they are all integral part of the research. One of them is the title of what is the catchphrase that speaks to the content of the work. And so you need that short title to be able to speak to your research that you are presenting. And then who authored that work, or who undertook that research, which is the authors. So the authorship is also very key. I understand throughout this year, there will be another section on each of these. And so I will not going to dwell on this, the authorship, the title, and how it should be structured. Once the time comes, I think all of us will be here to contribute to that discussion so that we can guide you as how to frame your title to attract editors' attention, to get your paper not to be Dex rejected. And then if the authors that undertook the work, in which institutions are they affiliated? Okay, in which organization? This one is required for one, judging that indeed you are legit, you are legitimate, like we say in Ghana here, you are legitimate. You are an existing human being, not sitting somewhere doing a Dex review and using AI to come out with things and pretend that this is what you've done, which we cannot prove. And so to ensure there's reproducibility, there should be an affiliation of an institution that can be affirmed, an institution that can be traced in the world. And then we have the key, the abstract. The abstract here also gives you a glimpse, it serves as the signpost to the main article. And so the abstract more or less a summary of the entire work. And so if it's an IMRaD structure that your research is taking, the abstract will also take the same IMRaD structure. If it is IMRaD, like or other structures that your paper is taking, which is recommended by your journal of preference, in that case, your abstract will also need to be structured in that format. There's what we call the structured abstract and a non-structured abstract. And especially in the BMC portfolio of journals, they prefer the structured abstract, for instance, where you have to caption or subsection each of your each information that you put in your abstract so that it can guide the readers and also guide the editors to make a quicker decision. And so there will be a whole section on abstracting, I think, the coming months throughout this year. And beyond this, once your abstract is done, below it, you see what we call the keywords. For those of us who are a bit older before the internet became what it is today, you know that if we are searching before the internet became what it is today, it was difficult. You have to go to the library, do all this, sometimes speak to the library at length for them to be able to identify. And those days, they have access to the PC, the supercomputers, and then you tell them what you are looking for. And then based on that, you'll be able to lay down some key terms and terminologies that can help them track the exact materials that we're looking for. So we carried that convention into the digital age, where now almost every information is now online and it's archived and they are indexed in different databases digitally. And so for us to be able to make those information discoverable by our search engines and our websites, we need to use keywords. So the keyword serves as a filter to the materials that are published online, archived, and deposited or indexed in different databases. So without the keywords, it becomes difficult for your material to be discoverable. So one importance of the keywords is for discoverability. So your material can be discovered. There are conventions to it. Like I said, there'll be different sections on this, so I wouldn't want to dwell on it. But the golden rule about coming out with keywords is that do not repeat words that you use or terms that you use in your title. What happens is that when you do that, what you are doing, you are reducing the discoverability of your work. In other words, anybody who types a keyword that is in your title, okay, will bring your title up. But in case you repeated all the words you used in your title, what essentially means that you're just repeating your title. So you need to look out for synonyms or other words that are also used in your field. So that if that person is not even familiar with the words you use in your title, by virtue of them typing a synonym of it, okay, they can still discover your work when they are searching online. And so always ensure that you reduce as much repetition of the type of the words used in your title, in your keywords. Lastly, on this slide, now let's look at the main work, which is the introduction, the method, results, and discussion. And so you see that I have golden bulleted each of the letters for each of these subsections. And so that's what we put together what we call the IMRaD. So introduction, methods, and results, and discussion. That is what it formed the IMRaD. And the introduction here essentially asks the question, what was the question? That is a question that this question is what is addressed essentially in the introduction session. And the methods point out to how did we answer the question, or what were some of the avenues and approaches we adopted or we deployed to arrive at answering the question above. And then what did we find in terms of our attempt in answering the question, the approaches and the tools that we deployed? What did it lead us to find? So that becomes your results. And then the discussion. What does these results mean? What do those results that you gained, mean? And what are their implications? What are their significance and their value to the field? Are they going to advance the field? Are they refuting a theory, or they're adding on to a theory? Are they debating a theory and settling an age-long question in the sector or in your field, for instance? And how is this even relevant for industry? How is it relevant for practice, for instance? And so this is the commonest structure you see in most papers. And in most of the nature publishing houses, portfolio of journals, like Nature Communications, Nature Genetics, Oxford Academics, most of their paper, Wiley and Sons and Co., you see most of their papers structured this way. It doesn't mean that all the journals there structure their papers in this way, but this is the commonest structure of a research paper you can find on the planet. Let's dive a bit deeper into.
I might just interrupt here. Since you do enjoy having a bit of interactive session, there was a question which I think might fit with what you're describing right now. So the question is it an obligation to include a literature review section in an article?
Good question. Yes and no. Yes, if the journal requires that. Yes, because in the social science, in the humanities, where I also interface, even though I'm a science student, I also interface because of the work I do in the humanities and social science, especially in economics. You are required to situate your work within a detailed and a very relevant literature review. And so some journals will require you to do a detailed literature review beyond the introduction you give. But in the science field, like where I am, and I think most of our colleagues here will be, the literature review is part of the introduction. You actually use the literature review to arrive at your introduction. So you situate your work. What are the gaps? You cannot just talk about gaps by guessing or by talking to your lab mate or your supervisory team, for instance, in your lab. You need to situate it with works that has been done previously, works that have been done recently, and all that. And so it's all part of the literature review, and then it forms part of the introduction, especially those of us who are in the sciences. But if we're in the social sciences, there are some journals like sustainability in MDPI, for instance, will require you to have a separate section for a brief introduction so that you can situate your work within literature. You can make your work relevant to the body of works in that area. And so, yes, so if you ask me, the answer is yes and no, and it all depends on the requirement of the journal.
Okay, thank you.
So as we saw from the brief expose we gave on the IMRaD structure, you can essentially tell that it's aimed to answer questions. Each of the sections are just a response to questions that you ask in your research design. And so I would like you to think of it as this. So for instance, if I ask you this question, what is the research problem or question? Which section of the IMRaD structure can you situate this question? And I'll need answers in the chat box if you don't mind. So the first question, somebody said introduction. Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else? We need at least 3 and then we'll move on. What is the research problem? Or what is the question the work is addressing? That is definitely the introduction. The second one, what did you do to find the answer? Which section of the IMRaD structure is this? Certainly, that is the materials and methods. So let me also make a distinction here. We'll get in there. So in the science field, for instance, especially those of us in the biological field, we prefer to use materials and method. The reason is that I remember I met a colleague who from economics. Why do you guys write materials and method? And I explained to him, because we use materials, we use glasswares, we use reagents. Okay, you guys don't use that. So you only write methods. Okay, so in the science field, we prefer to write materials and methods. The materials are the resources that you use, the infrastructure, okay, the laboratory setup, the equipment, the reagent, the glassware that you use in undertaking your work. Okay, so you need to be able to speak to each of these specific materials that you employed. So that's why we normally write in the science for the biological for materials and method instead of just the method. Okay, and then when you use that, you use them using a specific approach. What were some of the protocols? Those become your methods. The protocols you use, the techniques you modified, for instance. Okay, those become your methods. And so we normally write materials, but it's the same as methods. Those of you who are in the non-science field. So don't get confused with it. In case you see materials and method, it means they went a step further using certain specific physical materials, chemical materials, biological materials. Even those of us who are in the farming field, agriculture, for instance, we do field work, we do greenhouse work, we do tissue culture work, we do screenhouse work and all that. So you need to be able to speak to all that so that everything is not left unattended to. Last but not the least here, what did you find? So if I may ask, which section of the IMRaD method will this fall or this question addressing? So somebody asked the question, what's the difference between materials and methodology? I think I've responded to that question already. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
So
Yes.
So what did you find here referring to the results, and what do your findings mean refers to the broader discussion we spoke about? Here I don't know if there's a way, beekeeper, is there a way you could project this for us? I don't know if it's possible. I can do from my end. I wanted to show an example of a recent paper I published with my colleague, which we
Yep.
actually use the IMRaD method. I can click on it, but I'll have to reproject. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
No,
No.
we can just see your presentation right now, not the screen. If you go on to share and then go on to application, I think you'll be able to choose
Application.
the other window that you
Okay.
have open instead of the PowerPoint.
Okay. So give me a minute. Let me do that quickly so that I
Yep,
can
that's
show
okay.
you that. Search it. Okay. Okay. Let me share this quickly. Please let me know in the chat if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? I'm sharing a new screen. So
Yes,
this is a recent paper. Okay, we published in New Phytologist. I think the loading is taking too long. Okay, yeah, this shouldn't take too long. Okay, So you can see here, the first icon here is actually the logo for the journal, and then the name of the journal, New Phytologist, and the focus of the journal, which is on research. And this is the title with a different color. There you can see a list of human beings here who are the authors of the paper. You can see a list of other institutions here, which is our affiliation, and then the address to this institution that we are affiliated with. And then in new phytologists, instead of writing abstract, they will prefer for you to itemize them under summary. And so we do not use abstract in new phytologist. Okay, so summary. And then the summary is not supposed to be your typical abstract, but as a layman's summary of the work, so that everybody who wants to interact with your work can understand this and take interest to delve into the details of the work. And then when you come here, we have introduction. Okay, the next is materials and methods. So just like the person who asked the questions, if you see here, plant materials and growth conditions. So definitely, if you talk about plant materials, we're definitely talking about physical materials that we used. You can see here varieties of different tomatoes and all that we use in the work. And then different treatment that we subjected these varieties to and all that. So they are all materials. And that's why CI is in materials and method. And different approaches also were used to measure the different traits that we're interested to study in the tomato plant. And then when you scroll down, you can see the results section. Sorry, I want to show you the results section. Okay, here. So, okay, you can see the results here. Okay, so this typically followed the IMRaD structure we talked about earlier. So those of you who are looking forward to publish a new phytologist, this is the structure you have to follow. Okay, and then the discussion here. Some journals require you to separate the discussion from the conclusion. There are other journals too who do not care about this. An example is this journal. They don't care. Either you can separate it or you merge the discussion with a conclusion. And so in your concluding part of the discussion, you present your visual summary, which you call the model, which we have presented here, to summarize the work visually. And then you add some few statements here to conclude. So you can see here, in summary, this is our conclusion. So we just add it together without subhead in it. Okay, then you have other sections like acknowledgement, your computing interest, the author details, the references, and all that. So this is how a typical IMRaD structure of a paper looks like. So let's go back to our PPT presentation so that we can look at the other sections as well. Is there any question in the chat box?
Yes, there is a question regarding the difference between difference and similarity among the structure and main components of an original research, literature review, and systematic review. And the question before that, I think, will be answered later in the PowerPoint presentation, so we will get to that one.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I mentioned that there are other structures of a research paper. A typical example is the IRIDAM. So the IRIDAM here rather present the materials and methods section or the methodology section or the method section at the last end. Okay, instead of presenting the discussion and conclusion at the last end, it presents it as the last section of your work. So we have the introduction, the results, straight away to results, and then the discussion and conclusion, and then add your materials and method. I'm going to show you a typical example of a paper I recently published here as well. So forgive me, I'll need to go out and project so that you can see this one as well.
Not a problem at all. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was actually so fascinating, you talking about the materials and methods thing, because it never occurred to me that it's a very significant part of any scientific, not just scientific, more like a laboratory kind of research
Yeah.
papers do have materials as one of the biggest things, and that's why it's included in their in one of their titles. But it never occurred to me, even after reading so many journal articles, that that's the reason there's a difference, and there might be certain journals that require you to have written materials and methods, whereas some other journals might just be okay with methods, depending upon which discipline they publish on. So that was really interesting. Thank you for that.
Okay, let me show you this quickly. Um, I think it's Ethel. Okay, this was published last year. Okay, I want to open it before I project so that we don't waste time waiting for it to open. Okay. Uh, Please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. The
Plant
journal.
journal. You can see the plant journal.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a recent paper we published in the plant journal, one of the top journals in the field. So here you can see the journal and also the year of publication, the the volume number, which is 123, and the article version number. And then you see the title of the paper. I'm showing you because this one have a different structure from the previous one I showed you. Okay. And then you can see a list of human beings here. You can see my name in the middle here, a list of a number, I think 4 different affiliations here with the addresses. And then a bit of details here, including the address of the corresponding author, a history of when the paper was submitted, was reviewed and accepted for publication and all that. And then instead of rewriting abstract here too, they prefer we use summary. And the summary here is not as structured as we saw in the new phytologist paper I showed you. So here it's bolded, but have to be written in the prose format, but very brief. A very technical language here. They require us to write it compared to the new phytologists that expect us to write a layman summary. But here in the plant journal, they prefer we write more of a more technical language so that it's only tailored and targeted at expert within the field. And you can see the keywords as I mentioned below here. And then now let's look at the core structure. Introduction, just like we saw, and see the switch straight away into the materials and method, straight away, results. Please, can you see here, results? Yes, results section. And then from the results, you can see a number of graphs and tables. We'll move straight to, yeah, discussion. Discussion as the next section of the paper. This is what this journal requires as the structure of a paper. And then this is the model I told you about, a model summarizing. So instead of writing a detailed conclusion in the science field, especially those of us who are in plant physiology, genomics, biotechnology, we call this a model, a visual summary of the major findings. Okay, and then we add 1 or 2 lines to summarize your work. And then beyond that, the next section here, before the model, okay, here, because of the presentation, okay, is the materials and method as the last section. So that qualifies for the structure I was showing you, the IRIDAM instead of the IMRaD. Okay, and then subsequently, you see the same thing we saw in the previous one, the acknowledgement, the references, the declaration, and everything will be here. Okay, because of our time, I wouldn't want to waste too much time. I've added a DOI to each of these, to the slides. So when you have access to the slides, you can have a look at them and then make your own independent judgment. So apologies, let's go back to the main discussion. Okay. Okay. That is not all. There are also other styles, but because of time, I won't show it. I've added the DOIs. So the DOI is simply digital object identifier. These are persistent IDs, digital IDs, that are assigned to every paper that is published, a peer-reviewed paper that is published and indexed in a journal. It helps us to be able to trace and also fetch out these journals when we are searching the digital platform. So here, the another structure here, I also have another paper, I think 4 such papers or so to show, but I won't have time. So I'll put a DOI here that can take you to an example of these. So here we combine the results and the discussion section. Okay, so you have the introduction, the materials and method, the results and discussion together. Okay. There are some journals that also prefer this structure. To me, personally, this is my professional advice. I see this method to be a lazy mind approach, in the sense that most of the time, when you see the results and discussion combined, the interpretation is lost to the discussion. People use the interpretation as the discussion. They do not delve, deeply into what are the key trend in the results section, but they allow the discussion to swallow up the interpretation of the results. So personally, I'm not a fan of this method, but once I'm submitting the paper to a preferred journal that requires this method, whether I like it or not, I have to subscribe to it. So I have to reformat my work to meet this requirement. And then, especially in the legal field, those of you who are in law, sociology, psychology, there's what you call the essay format. You see most papers. Recently, a client that we assisted published a work in one of the top psychology papers, and it's completely an essay format. So you don't have this typical structure, but you have the usual introduction. They use the word background or overview and different structure, because you are not presenting a hardcore result or statistical result, but they are presenting a qualitative result. And so you are referring to respondents' opinions and views. And so they present in an essay format so that there could be coherence and consistency in the flow of the story. Okay. So there's this style as well for a research paper, especially for those of who are in the psychology, who are in the humanities. You will see more of the essay type. So when you see like it is not wrong. That is the requirement of the journal, and also a very common standard norm for your field. Now, let's look at the specific sections. I will have wished we'll end here so that we can take the question. But if I then delve into certain specifics, I'm sure most of us may leave here half informed. So let me indulge you, giving some 15 minutes. We'll rush through this. Please here, I won't take questions. Note down your questions, and then we'll take them at the Q&A section. So the introduction, argue your research question. It ensures that whatever gaps you are filling is properly situated within literature, like I said earlier, and also ensures that your work that you want to carry out is necessary. You are not duplicating, you are not copying somebody's work. And so you have to show that you have mastery over the field. My professor, for instance, from my master who trained me, he will fail your work not because of the discussion, no results, because of the results of the method. Mostly is the introduction, and mostly it comes from your poor literature review. So he sees the literature review as the bedrock of your paper, because if you don't have a current grasp, a deep grasp of your field, you end up duplicating somebody's work that do not present any novel finding. You find it difficult to publish, because most journal, once they've seen this is published, I'm sorry, it will not command larger readership. So there'll be not much interest to get your work accepted, to be rejected, to be DEX rejected. I see the introduction part as the funnel structure, like I showed you in the hourglass, okay, as a funnel structure. So it establishes a general field and its significance. So from that is inductive from a general structure, it opens up the general field, the global field, come down to your continent. For instance, if I'm talking about an issue like GMO, maybe we are going to look at the global overview as a general view. And then you come down, if you're in Asia or in an Africa, for instance, you now look at its overview in your continent. And then what are the specific sub-region you belong to? I in West Africa, maybe you are in Southeast Asia or Southwest Asia, for instance. And then you look at your specific country. And then the specific country, you even have to look at the region, okay, and then the specific town or even the geographical area. If I'm in agriculture, for what is the agroecology? Which agroecology does that study area belongs to, so that you can also situate it there. So from general to specifics, so that you'll be able to properly bring out the key issues and also what are the gaps that you are trying to address in this work. And so, like I said here, what essentially what this site here is what is the critically unknown or debated. There are several papers that has been cited, and so not a single paper can exhaust all the issues. Even those that are against it, you should be able to bring all their views back and synthesize their views into a coherent story here for the introduction. And then you need to justify why these are gaps. Okay, why is this important? Why is this relevant for an investor, for instance, or your government, for instance, to invest research funding to sponsor you to undertake that work? How is the result going to benefit society? How is it going to benefit industry? How is it going to contribute to knowledge in the sector? And so you need to also justify all that. And then your mission, which is your objectives, the hypothesis that underline the work. Okay, what are the theoretical framework you want to situate your work? Or others will prefer to use questions or you want to test hypotheses. So you need to define all the hypotheses and also define your conceptual framework to accompany the objectives that we want to accomplish. And then the method section, I call it as a blueprint of trust. Without the method section, we cannot reproduce your work. We call something replicability or replication. And so replication simply means repetition. If somebody did this work in the past, and I have similar facilities and resources in Ghana, for instance, can I go through your methodology and replicate same work here to see if I'll get the same results? Or with the environment and the materials that I use, the different resources that I use, okay, lead to a different result, completely different result, a slightly different results. Okay, so the introduction is very, very important. This is where your skin is in the game. What I mean by your skin is in the game, this is where you are proving that you are a researcher. Any good researcher have a full grasp of the method section of their work. Because if you do not have control over the method section, I'm sorry, it will affect the results you churn out and to affect the discussion you put out there. And so it provides a clear, concise, and complete blueprint for reproducibility, as you can see here. And most of the time, as a reviewer and editor myself, most of the things I look out for, beyond me looking at your introduction, the next section I focus my decision on, or that defines my decision, is the methodology. Yesterday, for instance, I reviewed a paper for one of the top journals in the field. I think before we exchanged the email, yes. And then I saw that, yeah, they have very good results. And then, unfortunately, when I went to the discussion, I was a bit disappointed. The results was poorly discussed. So I went back to look at their methodology again, and I saw that, yes, they have very sound methodology, but they couldn't take their time to develop it. They just make reference to other people's work. But if you look at the setup and the materials, the grasswares, the machines they use, completely different from what has been published previously. And so we expect you to own this section so that you can tell us what you did differently to arrive at the result that you're arriving at. And so as a reviewer, as an editor, we don't joke with the method section. If the method section your discussion can be good, your results can be good, we'll reject your work. What it means is that you are not honest. Okay, you didn't do this work, or you pay somebody to do the work and you don't even understand the work you are presenting. We want you to own the work so that you can speak to the work and add up to knowledge. And so we need to take the method section very seriously. It provides enough information for what I said earlier for exact replication. And so most of the time, we recommend you use subheadings. If you are using tools and machines, for instance, softwares, name the model, name the versions of the softwares that you use. For instance, if you're into sequencing and you're using the Illumina over 6000, mention that and tell us the version you use. If you're using software, like I mentioned, for instance, you are using the R statistical software, you should be able to tell you whether it's version 4, version 4.30, or version 5.60, and all that. And briefly explain why you chose the method or the analysis. And this is where you also tell us the statistical text you are going to use. There's a statistical method you are using to analyze your results and justify why you chose that method. Because we'll question every bit of it, okay, to ensure that your work is beyond doubt, not a duplicated work or plagiarized work. Last but not the least is the results section. And so I see the results as the facts that are logically presented. The reason is that your results are direct outputs or outcome of your method, okay, of the experiment you set up. And so you present data that speaks to your research questions or that responds or answers each question that you ask in your research question, for instance. So the golden rule here is just report, do not interpret. Unfortunately, most of us confuse interpretation with the results presentation. So when you say present result, what we want you to do is to present the obvious trend. What are the common trends in your results? That's what we expect you to present. We are not expecting to interpret or flesh them out, what it means, those implications. All those belongs to the discussion section. And then follow the order of your methods. So you presented your method in a certain manner, okay, and arrive at your result. But when you are presenting your result, you presented it from bottom up, which is completely opposite to the structure of your method section. That alone can lead to text rejection because it means that you're not tying your work to your research objectives. So we need things to follow in a chronological order so that people who are busy do not have time. They'll be able to track how your work was structured and how it responded to all your questions, how you were able to accept or reject your hypothesis that you formulated, how you were able to respond to your research questions and all that. And then here, we advise strongly you use visuals. Here, visuals will mean either figures or tables as a primary storytelling tool. There are several tools that you can use. I think there's a whole section that I saw in the agenda for the year that is going to delve into this. So I'll leave it here like that. And then you use text. And the text there shouldn't be verbose. What I mean verbose, don't write too long. Okay, just briefly to guide the reader through the visuals, either the figures you are presenting or the tables you are presenting, and highlight key data points. This is very, very important. And then we normally use figure shows this and that and that. And then there are specific language you use. So I think the language, there's a whole section on it. I'm sure they'll be able to tell which language, which diction, which tenses that you need to even use for the results section. Last but not the least, the discussion section. I call here the so what section. And so what section? You've done the work. You've gotten the results. And so what? So tell us what your results mean. So this is what you interpret your results, you synthesize them, and then you argue for their significance. You argue for their relevance to meeting your objectives and how relevant they are to the reader. And then normally we advise that you start from key findings. Okay, present the major findings of your work first. I've seen papers that are recommended to reject for rejection. It's not because their results were low, but the presentation format was poor. They want you to read unto the last end before you arrive at the core present of the core findings. You go and present the core findings as the last batch. I'm sorry, it will not prick the interest of an editor that is overseeing over thousands of papers every week and to select from. You'll just read the first, second paragraph, and that is it. So please always present the core findings, okay? And then subsequently, all those minor findings that make your major results concrete and solid can be added. And then interpretation and synthesis. Here you tell us what your results mean, while how they fit into your broader research design and framework, and how they fit into the broader scientific field that you are trying to add on to augment. And then also you compare that with literature. Like I said, you compare and contrast. Okay. And there are certain specific terminologies that we use. I think, and also there are certain specific language style tenses and also the format that you need to use. I think all that will be done when we come to the language of scientific communication. There's a whole section on this in the year under review. And then if there's something very important, let me mention this before I move on to the limitation. Try and resolve conflict. If your work contribute to resolving a century-old conflict, when I say conflict, a century-old debate among scientists, but nobody have really been able to do a detailed work that you did, and it resolve a conflict, a debate. Somebody says, oh, this hormone upregulate this gene. Somebody says, no, it rather antagonizes the gene. Somebody says, no, it rather down-regulated the gene. But then you've done an extensive work, right from the biochemical screening to the morphological screening to the phenotypic screening. You did a molecular work and you need physiological work to confirm. You've done enough work. Once it answers that question completely, try and resolve that conflict in the field. And to us editors as reviewers, this is what we look out for. Does your work resolve an age-long conflict in the field? A question that researchers have been beating around the bush to publish more papers. Okay, so put some age-old conflict to a rest and be very clear and specific with it. Don't beat around the bush. Just be straightforward with it and let it speak to your results. Once you have the results to back up, make that statement as possible as you can. Last but not the least, here is the limitations. So ensure your every work have a limitation. You cannot do it all. But what reviewers and editors do not want you to do or do not want to see is that we know that every work have a limitation, and that's we leave it for the readers or the reviewers or the editors to know that yes, there's a limitation, but you didn't acknowledge them. So acknowledging the limitation actually builds credibility. Without it, we think, no, you don't even seem to be credible in presenting the results you are presenting. So yes, there are limitations, but acknowledge it yourself. Let it come from, don't let it come from reviewers, don't let it come from the editors, and don't let even readers like yourself, myself, write to the editor that this paper thing is fabricated because you did not acknowledge the shortfalls or the weaknesses of your paper. Acknowledge them. Acknowledge to our acknowledgement to us build credibility and show that yes, you're on top of issues. And then whatever issues are, we can let it slide and look at the merits of your paper and recommend it for acceptance. Yes. And then what are the theoretical implications or the basis of your work, the conceptual framework? What are the practical implications, for instance? And then what does your results hold for future research, for instance? What implication does it hold for industry? Does it hold for policymakers? Okay, and does it augment existing knowledge in the field? Acknowledge all that and explicitly spell that out in your work as part of your discussion. When you do that, I'm sorry, within a day or two, an editor who is very fast with decision, you see that we send you a message, your work has been reviewed by our internal team and we've recommended for review and we've invited reviewers. And so, unfortunately, most of us do not pay attention to some of these things. And so you send your work, the next day it's rejected. Okay, but even if it is rejected, don't give up. It's part of the publishing journey. Rework it and submit it to another journal until you get it right. I remember my first paper was rejected 7 times. In fact, 6 times. It was the 7th time that it was accepted. That was my first time of publishing a peer review journal. The day it got accepted, the way I jubilated. Meanwhile, I had to even cough up money to pay for the APC. It's not that I was happy to pay the money, but at least that people who are authorities in the field now have accepted my stupid idea. Okay, sorry to use the word, that I put there to be acceptable for publication, to me was an excitement and also an encouragement for me. So do not give up. I've worked on another work with a colleague that the work was rejected 11 times. It was the 12th time when he gave up. It took us almost 4 years to get the work published. So the 12th time was when it was accepted for publication. So if your work has been rejected, it doesn't mean that your work is bad. Maybe there are some few issues that you need to address. And mostly we'll give reasons why the paper was rejected. And then just use that to build on it and strengthen the work. My last on this will be the journal's perspective. I've even started. So here, typically when your manuscript is submitted to a journal, the first 5 minutes, okay, you assign to editorial assistant, like our sister here, who is an operations manager, for instance. It will be assigned to her 5 minutes. She make her decision. She will scan through quickly, okay, and then look at all these issues and reason. If they meet this requirement, I'm sorry, yes, there'll be a DEX decision. The DEX decision are two. Either they reject it or they recommend it for peer review. Okay, so it just takes 5 minutes to put that at the back of your mind. So do not make it complicated for us to see what you are presenting. And then even after the editorial assistant make the decision, they will send their final decision to the editors. And the editors have a number of quick checklists. And within 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, they will either confirm the decision or relook at the decision. Okay, so technically your work have 7 to 10 minutes on the editorial desk. So if you do not put the things in order, you do not frame and format your work well, within 10 minutes, your work will be rejected and sent to you. Okay. So normally what we look out for, some of the quick checklists are the scope and the fit. And the scope here refers to, or the fitness here refers to how your journal belong to the journal. In other words, does the journal fit within the scope of this journal? Okay, let's say my work is on genomics and I'm going to submit to a journal that focuses on infectious disease. There's no correlation there. Nobody's there even can understand the language you use. So it's completely out of scope. It's not fit for that journal. And then we also look at the novelty or the significance. And here, I think Asians, I'm sorry, I'm not being biased, but that is my experience with you because I study in China. Asians are more concerned about novelty, 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 novelty. In Europe, they are concerned about significance. There's a difference. The novelty here is that what is new in this work. But we, I think, who are subscribed to the Western style of education, think that most of the things we are doing has already been done. We are just rehashing them using new methods, new approaches, new technology to do. So there's nothing really new. But especially in China, if your work is not novel, I'm sorry, to be rejected within under 1 minute. Okay, so the novelty is how new, how unique is your work. And it's not easy these days to have a unique finding. And so if your work doesn't have a unique finding, does it significantly contribute to the body of knowledge in your area? In most journals like Wiley and Son, Taylor and Francis, Oxford academics, for instance, they are more concerned about significance than novelty. Okay, but if you want to be promoted in a Chinese university, I'm sorry, on the science research field, then you need to look for do work that are more novel, and it's not easy to do a novel work. And then last but not the least is the quality, the basic quality. Does it follow the journal guideline, as we see in the next slides, the author guideline? Is the language sound, the language that was used, the grammar issue, are the structures used, are the tenses okay? Is the clear way that the story is being presented so that anybody who is not even a first speaker, a native speaker, will be able to understand your work? And then, like I said, there are only two outcomes. Either the desk rejects or they send for review. The reviewer's mindset. So yeah, I was speaking as a reviewer. So subconsciously, every reviewer like myself, when we receive a paper to review, we'll look at it. First, I scan through, I ask myself, is this novel work? Is it new? Is it a new work? How important is this to the field? What exactly is it contributing to the field? Okay. And then my next question I'll be asking, how does this work even advance the field that I belong to? And is it true? So through here, I'm now going into the methodology and relate it to the results. The results they are claiming to be presenting, are they valid? Were they rigorously done? Was the methodology rigorously designed to be able to arrive at the results that they are churning out? And the method section again. So I needed to also be ensured that the statistics that was used to analyze the results is actually robust enough to arrive at the results they are presenting. So it's not just, so if I think the statistical method, recently, I think that was just last week, there was a paper I was working with a colleague in the state, in the US. And then it was a field work basically, but then there was some level of social aspects that was done. And then I realized the field work, we were using a correlation method that in my statistical training, I consider to be problematic. So I question, I cannot allow this to pass if I'm going to be a co-author on this. We did not use Pearson correlation for field work. Most of us have done this because we didn't know. And then he will not agree because he's been publishing a lot on this using Pearson correlation. And no journal, no editor or reviewer has raised the issue. So I sent him a couple of papers to go and read. And recently, a colleague and I wrote a blog on it. Why isn't Pearson correlation for field work or field data is wrong? He wouldn't agree. So I sent the blog to him. He read it. And after 3 days, he came back and said, I'm sorry, I think you are right. And so, yes. So as a review, I'm sharing all this for you to know that, yes, once you review, you build also the experience. So those of you who are PhD students, you are postdoc, if you have not reviewed before, don't also deny yourself the opportunity to learn. Okay, there are and the review comments that comes, take them seriously. So if I make this, it's not that because I hate you or because I don't like you, but I want you to do the right thing so that tomorrow when you and I we are not there, somebody will come and take your work. They won't say that no, this your work was wrong, but nobody spotted it. And nobody, the fact that you have published the wrong thing in the past, does not mean you should accept it in 2026. So always be ensure that the right thing is done so that the results can be useful to stick with it within the sector. And then,
Dr. Kojo, I just wanted to let you know that you have 5 minutes. So if you could conclude, then that would be great.
yes, so this is my last but one slide. So beyond the
Yeah.
emerald, so in recent times, there's what you call the running title, or let's call it a short title. Beyond your main title, you are supposed to also, some journals does that. You're supposed to come out with another title, a short version of the title. We call it the running title or the short title. Okay. And I normally use what I call the hedge title. So the hedge title is where I use the final outcome of the work. So what is the major finding of the work? So I rephrase the major finding of the work as the short title so that it makes my work stand out. And then any editor who look at who does not even agree with the longer title, once they see the shorter title, so no, this thing captures it. I think this thing has some potential. Let's look at it so that you don't reject my work. And then your cover letter. Your cover letter to me is a pitch to the editor. If you do not pitch well, if you know a pitch is an SME or a startup pitching their business, presenting their business to an investor, convince an investor to invest in them. So you are pitching to the editor, okay, to look at your work and recommend it for review and for subsequent publications. So if you do not pitch the editor well, I'm sorry, based on the cover letter, your work may be good. Your work will be rejected because it's based on your cover letter that your work is recommended to the editorial desk, and the editorial desk appoint somebody to review it do the initial checks, and then present their finding to the editor to make the final decisions. So your cover letter is also very, very important. Make sure it is persuasive, and also it does not repeat the abstract, or it does not repeat your major results, but tell us the significance. How does it fit into the scope of the journal, the novelty, the significance, and the impact? And impact here, I think there'll be another section we'll look at that on. The last one is I'll talk here about the response letter. Here, the response letter is normally the response you give to the review by the reviewers and the editors. I will be very brief here. Always ensure that you are formal in responding to the review comment. Ideally, present them as a point-by-point rebuttal. So rebuttal here means that if you have a disagreement, you do not go arguing like a politicians argue, okay? In a very diplomatic and polite way. Provide evidence, provide references to prove that, yes, even though what the editor is saying or the reviewer is saying, you agree. But in this case, it may not be right for your work. Once you argue like that, I don't have a problem with it. We'll let it pass, because that is what we do in science. And be polite, and also ensure that you can show the changes that you have made in your new work. So you can use track changes, for instance, or use different color schemes to show. I will not go through this because of our time. So yes, let me touch on this. Instructions to authors. This is where the whole problem starts. If you do not take your time to read instructions to the authors, you have problem in structuring your work or even framing your work. So always make sure you devote some time. I normally use a day or more to read the instruction to the authors before I make my final decision whether I'm going to submit to this journal or not. Instruction to the author guide, others will call it the author guidelines. In some sections, they call the manuscript guidelines, with the same thing. They'll provide you step by step every guideline that you need to help you in crafting and formatting your work. So this is a visual breakdown of what goes into the author guideline. So please take your time. Another way to go about it is, if you are that type and you are very tight, you are familiar with the journal, but the journal has made some changes, go in for a paper that has been published, look for a paper that has been published in the journal at least 3 months, some few months ago. And that also can serve as a guide to you. Okay, so don't go for more than 3 months, because journals keep on making changes almost every 6 months. So look for a recent paper that has been published by the journal, let's say like 3 months ago, and that can also serve as a guide. And then you may make their format and format your manuscript to it. So I would like to end here, and if there are questions, we will take them, and then we'll leave you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kojo. That was an amazing session. I'm just going to let you pause for a second, because I do want to address the participants. So before moving to the Q&A round, kindly review the session using the link in the chat. Review and feedback is mandatory for receiving the participation certificate. Instructions on how to receive the certificate will be shared to you at the end of the Q&A. So if you would like a participation certificate, kindly visit the review link now and provide us with feedback. If you have any questions for Dr. Kojo, you may either raise your hand, or you could send us the questions in the chat. We will be going through the questions that you've sent previously in a little while. I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Kojo so much. It was such an engaging session. I don't even know when the time just passed, but there were so many new things. I noted down a few. I loved the analogies that you were giving at the start, and the little subtitles for, what do you think introduction is, and so that kind of thing. Also, the personal experiences that you added, and how it's all about the publishing journey, and there might be rejections along the way, but you just take feedback from the editors and then you work on it and you keep trying. So that was also amazing. There are those little tips about why affiliation is really required, writing title at the end of the discussion so that you know what title to write to attract that kind of readers. And also, yeah, a lot of the other examples. And I really loved your dedication about you didn't want to leave us half informed, because that is absolutely dangerous. So overall, I really thoroughly enjoyed the session, and I hope that our participants can agree with me, and hopefully they can review us so that we can give the feedback to Dr. Kojo later as well. But yeah, so if you would like your participation certificate, you can go on the review link now and send us your feedback. So thank you, Dr. Kojo. I'm just going to go through the questions now, and you could answer them as we go, if you're okay. Hope you've had time to drink some water and take a bit of rest. But yeah, we're gonna go back to the Q&A now. I think the first
Sure.
question was, could you explain the difference and similarity among the structure and main components of an original research, literature review, and systematic literature review?
Okay. Thank you. So, depending on the field, in my field, for instance, the biological sciences, literature review, systematic review, even meta-analysis go through the same structure of the journal you are targeting to submit. Okay. However, in certain instances, especially in those of you who are in the social science and humanities, you do not even present the methodology section. You present this as your review report, and that is accepted for publication. Yes, I'll be involved in that publication, in such kind of publications. But if the journal requires that you follow a specific structure, please follow the structure. For instance, if you did a systematic review, how did you search for the papers? Which are the key terms you used in arriving at the papers that you reviewed and you are summarizing or you are synthesizing? These can form part of the methodology. What are the tools you use in filtering out thousands and millions of research papers in your field to settle on all these papers that you use in your review report? These form part of your methodology. And how did you arrive at those results that you are presenting as your result from the literature review? Okay, so these are all part of your methodology. You can have, that's a 1 or 2 paragraph. I remember published one recently with a colleague, I think was it in Japan. We just had 2 paragraphs for the methodology section. It was a meta-analysis. No, systematic review. We only had 2 paragraphs as the methodology. And then we detailed out the key terms we use, the search terms we use in the database. And we named the database, the versions of the databases that we use. So this forms part of your methodology. And then if the journal is such that it does not require you in terms of your presentation of a systematic review in that format, they have a particular format that is different from the IMRaD or the IRaD or any of the structure that we show. Please follow that format. Don't say that, oh, I read this paper, it was published by this same journal some 10 years ago, and the format was IMRaD. And this time around, they're asking us to present, so I'll present in the IMRaD. If you do that, I'm sorry, you are reducing your chances of your paper being considered for review. And so always follow the format of the journal. So there are papers like that, especially meta-analysis, and then bibliometric analysis, for instance. You do not necessarily have to do a field work or a laboratory work or any biological sampling and all that, or even social sampling. These are desk work you do using your laptop or your PC with the internet. But how you were able to arrive at those data, those information, are part and parcel of your method section. So tell us how you did that, okay, on your desktop as part of the methodology section. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think that does answer the question. Thank you. Um, the other question was regarding combining the results and discussion section. So they were asking for a little bit of clarification on whether you are suggesting to put or write an interpretation and discussion section in separate manners.
Okay, I think I made a statement there. Somebody even repeated here. Like I said, I gave a disclaimer. I only said that in passing. To me personally, I consider combining the results and discussion as a lazy man approach of presenting your work. Why will I suffer and present a lot of results? And then because there's a page limit or there's a word limit, okay? There's a word limit. Because of the word limit, I cannot really explain what the key trend of the results are. And then what I needed to do is just put some small phrase, short phrase, a short sentence there, and then present the discussion. At the end of the day, when you look at it, just the first sentence that talks about the results. The rest of it is about discussion. The discussion swallowed up the result. So if somebody who is not statistically proficient and does not understand the visuals you presented, the result, the tables and graph you presented, the person will not be able to make a meaning out of the results. That's why I said, to me,
Yeah.
combine the results and discussion. If I had my way in the academic field, we should avoid it. But if that's
Yeah.
what your journal is asking for, please follow it. I'm not saying it's bad, but my personal opinion is that I feel it's a lazy man approach to present results and discussion. So some journals require you to do results, combine the results and the discussion, like I showed you earlier. Okay, so please
Okay,
stick to the
thank you.
guideline. The guideline is very key. I'm not saying don't do it, but at a personal level, I think is a lazy man approach of presenting your results finding, your research
Yeah, it
findings.
is quite a difficult task to effectively and efficiently write something in a short
Mm.
sentences and reduce the word limit. So I understand what you're saying about repeating oneself. So it's absolutely necessary to be sufficient in what you're writing, and hopefully you can do that if the journal doesn't specifically ask for different sections, or I mean, a combined section, it would be better in different sections. Yes. So next question is, we should not repeat the words in the title. You said that we should not repeat the words in the title, which reduce the visibility of an article. What other things should we keep in mind while selecting our keywords?
Okay, very good question. We have different people joining this meeting. I can see a couple of people from Nepal. I've also seen some colleagues from Pakistan joining. I've also seen some colleagues from even Nigeria joining. I've also seen colleagues from China joining as well. Um, Let me say that every region and certain terminology that is common have certain terminology that are common to them, especially in the research field. In Ghana, for instance, we use the British system. But when I got to China, I realized that they use American blended with their own system. And so, for instance, we use thesis to refer to dissertation that we do, that is thesis for PhDs and masters. Okay, and we use dissertation for only undergraduate. But in China, for instance, dissertation was referred to the PhD thesis. Okay, and then we use thesis for undergraduates and masters. These are not terms that are not wrong, but then they are used differently in different jurisdictions. Okay, so assuming your field, we are more familiar with a particular term, and that term is already captured in your title, and that is the only term you use, but you didn't use the synonyms, another common term that is also used in other jurisdictions. What it means is they are reducing the discoverability of people from that region who will be searching for your work, who maybe use those terms that they are familiar with than the term you are using from what you know. I don't know if you get me. So if you are repeating the words, the key words in your title, you are reducing your chances of your work being discovered by others. So instead of you repeating those words, my advice is use the synonyms. Okay, synonyms of those keywords that are also uh, words that are accepted terminology. official terms that are used in your field, that are synonyms to what you use in your title. So you don't repeat the keywords in your title, and you can broaden the discoverability of your work. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yep. So the next question that we have is, could you briefly provide more insights on novelty factors? We will also not be taking, I think that might be the second last question because we do not have that much time left. But could the participants please also do the reviews because we will only be issuing certificates for after we receive reviews. Sorry, I'll
What
just repeat
was
the
the
question
question
for you,
about?
Dr. Kojo.
Okay.
Could you briefly provide more insights on novelty factors?
Novelty. Okay. Novelty is not a factor. Novelty is a metric that we use to judge your work, whether your work is novel or not. What we mean by novelty is that it's how unique is your work, how outstanding is your work, how is your work different from previous work that has been done on the topic or in the area, for instance. So that's what we mean by novelty. Okay. Significance. What we mean by significance is how is your work contributing, even though it may be a work that has been done severally in your field. But did you use a new approach? Did you use a new methodology? And did it lead to a different outcome or the same outcome? That, in a sense, contribute to the field, but it doesn't bring out anything. You can use a different methodology, arrive at the same result. It does not necessarily mean that because your work did not come out with the novel findings, a unique finding, your work is not important. You use a different approach. For instance, I can use qPCR, okay, to quantify or to measure the gene expression of a particular gene in a particular biological material. And somebody rather use semi-quantitative or what you call a qualitative qPCR, qualitative PCR using just gel electrophoresis, and then be able to show us the bands. That is a qualitative method of also presenting the same results. Okay, the same result presented differently with different approaches. It does not mean because somebody has used qPCR to present it, showing us the numbers, the expression levels, quantitatively or statistically, and you are presenting yours qualitatively, it means that your work is not important. We use a different approach, but we arrive at the same. Your work is significant, but it's not novel. It's not different. It's not unique. Sorry, it's not unique. It's not new. But your work is still important to the field because you are using a different approach to show the same results. I don't know if that is more clearer. So novelty here is talking about the uniqueness of your work, the newness of your results. Okay, how unique is your results from the existing results in the system? And then the significance is talking about its contribution to your field, not necessarily looking at its uniqueness, its newness, but maybe using different approaches, using different materials, or conducting your work in a different environment that work has not been conducted before. So to us, from this part of we consider the significance more important than the novelty.
Thank you, Dr. Kojo. I don't know if the review links have been fixed, but thank you. And I just wanted to say we had at least 54 participants at one point from 22 different countries in this webinar. So thank you everyone for joining. We have a series of such sessions every month. They happen on the 20th of the month. So for example, this one was on 20th of January. So we'll be having another one on 20th of February. And we will have another research expert. And this is a webinar series. So this one was on structure of the research paper. Next one might be on introduction, how to frame that. And then next one might be on literature review. So we'll be taking you through different aspects of research writing throughout the year. So hopefully you'll join on the next one. And thank you so much for the reviews that have been coming in. And I hope you enjoyed the session. If you have anything to say to Dr. Kojo, please feel free to use the chat. And also, yeah, we'll be adding some WhatsApp links and Facebook. So if you can follow us on those pages, we will be sharing the recording of this session as well. So you can definitely get connected through that. So yeah, I think that was all of the questions, and that was the end of the session. We will be sharing the certificate link now. I think that has been shared. So if you just go onto that URL and add that access code, you'll be able to generate a certificate. And yeah, a special thank you to Dr. Kojo again. I think everyone massively enjoyed the session. They were saying thank you and looking forward to the next session. So thank you for all the insights. We really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it. So I think that is all. I will leave the Zoom link open for a bit so that everybody can go onto the certificate link and get their certificates. But that marks the end of our webinar, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you for joining. Bye.